Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Broadway star Liz Callaway performs a special tribute to the late Stephen Sondheim this Saturday at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. She joined me to discuss Sondheim's enduring legacy, as well as her own career from a dancing napkin ring in Disney's Beauty and the Beast to the singing voice of Don Bluth's Anastasia. Hey, Liz Callaway. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
I'm so happy to be talking to you.
We are talking because you are doing a very cool event at the Kennedy Center this Saturday. It's going to be a special tribute to the late Stephen Sondheim, Broadway legend, and you're calling it To Steve with Love. Is that a play on To Sir with Love, I guess?
Well, it's a combination of a play on To Sir with Love. Thank you. No one else has gotten that. And,
are you kidding me? Where's all the Sidney Poitier fans in the house? Yeah.
But also, there is a lyric in the song "Company" to Bobby with Love, and so it's sort of a play on words for both those things. All the Sondheim lovers got that immediately, but not the "To Sir with Love" reference. But he was a teacher to me, and teaching was one of his passions, and that title just kind of came to me.
It's perfect. And I know Company holds a special place in your heart as the first you saw. I'll get of his, that is. We'll get to that in a second. But first, more about the show. You know, like what songs from Sondheim's prolific career might we hear in this set list at the Kennedy Center? It's got to be hard to choose, right?
Well, it is. I'm actually doing 16 songs, and some of them actually are medleys. So there's actually a lot of different songs. I'll be probably the most famous song of Sondheim's was "Send in the Clowns," which of course I'll be doing. But I'll be doing a number of songs from "Merrily We Roll Along," which was my first Broadway show, and songs from "Company" and "Sunday in the Park with George" and "Passion." And it's a very personal tribute to Steve, as I graduated to calling him. And I've been so looking forward to doing it in DC, because I know DC is a town of Sondheim lovers. So I'm excited to be doing my show Saturday night at the Kennedy Center.
Oh, DC loves Sondheim. I know, especially Signature Theater. They do Sondheim tributes all the time. But I mean, every theater around town. He's he was a legend. Still is. I hate to say was, because still is. The music lives on.
Yes, there was just an article or something about how Sondheim is cool again, because there's so many Sondheim shows happening on Broadway. Sweeney Todd and "Merrily We Roll Along" all throughout DC. And, I made an album of the show that I'm doing on Saturday night. It was nominated for a Grammy Award, which was very unexpected. But it's suddenly Sondheim is, Sondheim never left, but he's just, people just love his music and respect his music. And it shows, because he's really big right now.
I think it's funny that you said that he's cool again. I'm sure that article probably came, I would imagine, because there was the 2021, the Steven Spielberg remake of West Side Story that got Sondheim back in, and I guess he passed away right at the same time. And then I think his voice was he calls in on the answering machine in Tick Tick Boom to.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Inspiring a young Jonathan Larson to go make Rent and everything else. But yeah, so I mean, the Sondheim is sort of back in the zeitgeist. Well, that's very cool. Thanks for teasing a couple of the numbers we might hear, but you have to come out to the show to hear everything, folks.
That's right.
All right. Well, let's go a little more into your backstory and your discovery of Sondheim. I teased it a few seconds ago, but let's dive in. So I know you grew up in Chicago, in 60s and 70s. So your first Sondheim musical, it was Company on Broadway in 1970, right? Like, so remind us that first experience, like how blown away you were by his genius that very first time.
I will. Even though I was born and raised in Chicago for 5 years, my dad worked for CBS Radio at the time, and he was transferred to New York. So we actually moved to New York in 1968 for 5 years. And so the first Broadway show, as you said, was Company. And my parents saw the show first and they loved it. They brought home the cast album and I just went crazy for it. I listened to it, I memorized it, and then they took my sister and me to see the show. And that just stayed with me. And there was something about his music. And I mean, I was like, I think I was 8 or 9, maybe not. I think I was 9 when I saw it. And Company is definitely not a show for 9-year-olds, but it spoke to this 9-year-old. And what was kind of amazing is Company was directed by the great Hal Prince, and had a book by George Firth, and played at the Alvin Theater. And then 10 years after seeing Company, I made my Broadway debut in Merrily, We Roll Along, which was also directed by Hal Prince, book by George Firth, and played at the Alvin Theater. So it was kind of, when I got cast in Merrily, I just thought, oh my God, how amazing is it that I am just with the same people in the same theater that meant so much to me when I was little.
Wow, so cool. The same composer, Sondheim, same director, Harold Prince, and same theater, Alvin Theater on Broadway. You were once a kid in the seats watching those folks make Broadway history, and then you join and on the cast and work with all of them. That's great. And remind me who else was in that early 80s Merrily We Roll Along cast? Wasn't a young Jason Alexander a future
young
Seinfeld?
Jason Alexander? Yes. We knew he was a star back then. He was fantastic. Also, Giancarlo Esposito, a wonderful actor.
Oh, wow. Right before he did Bugging Out and Do the Right Thing, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So he also was in Merrily. Those are probably the two, biggest names nationally, but it was a wonderful cast. We were all very young, and Merrily closed very quickly. It's a huge hit on Broadway now, starring Daniel Radcliffe. But we closed after 2 weeks. And after we closed, the next day we recorded the cast album. And that, even though we weren't a success when we opened, I think the cast album was so important. And over the years, people thought, oh my God, this is one of Sondheim's greatest scores, which I think it is.
Wow, Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Hal Prince. There you go. That's really, really cool. And who did you play, by the way, in that real quick?
Well, I was originally hired as a swing, but then I was in the chorus. So I was in the chorus. I had 2 solo lines, which you can hear on the cast album, which, by the way, I will also recreate my 2 solo lines on Saturday night. Nice. And but I also understudied the female lead. And I never went on, but during rehearsals, she got sick, and I sang her songs for her during some of the rehearsals. And I think that's how Sondheim heard me, because then after Merrily, he invited me to be a part of some really wonderful concerts and recordings.
Yes, and one of those was you doing the 1985 Lincoln Center concert production of Follies. You were doing the role of young Sally. I believe it was filmed as like a documentary, for posterity. But I have the list in front of me, but why don't you tell the listeners, if you can remember, rattle off some of the massive names of showbiz that are in that. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, they were all in the same thing.
It was incredible. It was Barbara Cook, Mandy Patinkin, Carol Burnett, Lee Remick, Elaine Stritch, George Hearn. It was an amazing cast. In fact, I just was looking up to see what musical theater albums won Grammy Awards. We did a live recording of it. That was why they did this Follies in Concert. It was to create a cast album or a live recording. And it won a Grammy Award. And I had no idea, because this was 1985, and, there was no internet. So you just didn't necessarily find out about things. But it was amazing. And I was young Sally to Barbara Cook's Sally. And the last time I performed in DC doing a solo concert was at the Kennedy Center as part of the Barbara Cook concert series at the Terrace Theater. And so there's something really special about knowing that I'm going to be back there on Saturday And I will be talking about my experiences of Follies in concert and singing a song from the show that Barbara sang.
Wow. And what song was it?
In Buddy's Eyes.
Okay, Buddy's Eyes. Wow, that's a full circle back to the Kennedy Center, and
Right?
I'm glad you're including some tidbits on Follies when you're performing. And by the way, of all the people you mentioned, I mean, it was a legendary lineup. We also have to mention that what Compton and Green were in it too.
Oh yes,
The
yes. It
famous
was
duo
amazing.
composers of "On the Town" and Singing in the Rain," the Bandwagon. Their songs showed up in like the biggest movies and some of the plays ever.
You're absolutely right. It was a who's who. It was amazing.
All with
And
the New York Philharmonic, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and it was probably the greatest. We rehearsed for 5 days, and it was terrifying. It was like 5 days. How are we going to put this together? This massive score, and we were so scared. And when we came out, the women, I'll talk about this more on Saturday night, but we entered, and the audience, the reaction, it was like a tsunami of sound of applause when we entered, and you can actually hear it on the live album. And it was one of the most exciting, thrilling moments I've ever experienced in the theater. And so it's fun in my show, in addition to singing songs about, singing songs by Steve, I also tell a lot of stories of my experiences. And so it's a concert, but it almost feels more like a theater piece to me.
Absolutely. And speaking of Sondheim, did I read that you appeared with him on the famous Inside the Actor Studio show?
Yes, I did. That was another terrifying experience. um, uh, it was me and Jimmy Walton, who played the lead in Merrily on Broadway, and we sat like 5 or 6 feet from him. And as he was being interviewed by James Lipton, we would then sing examples of his songs
Whoa.
that they would be talking about. So we'd be singing, and then he was right there. And so it was a little intimidating, but it's amazing because you can see it on YouTube. And one of my favorite moments from that is at the very end, Jimmy and I sang "Move On" from Sunday in the Park with George. It's one of my favorite Sondheim songs. And at the end, there's a beautiful lyric: "Anything you do, let it come from you, then it will be new. Give us more to see." And when I sang that, I turned and I looked at Steve and said that to him. And you can see that on YouTube. And it's just like one of those goosebump moments.
Wow. And rest in peace, not only Sondheim, but also James Lipton. Wow. The fact that you were
Yes.
there with those two icons singing in between the interview, that's great. All right. Well, we're going to all have to look that up on YouTube. Everybody, stop what you're doing. Well, after this interview, finish listening to this.
Yes. Don't turn off this interview.
Then go to YouTube. Well, yes, you can't turn off the interview yet because there's so many. There's a couple more before we run. We have to discuss some of your other roles, beyond Sondheim, on stage and in animated, Disney movies and Bluth movies and the rest. So, real quick, so I think you were the original Ellen in Broadway's Miss Saigon in '91.
Yes, I was.
And what's cool about that, we're going to tie it into the animated stuff this way, because you shared the stage with Lea Salonga, who joined us, I don't know, a couple years ago on WTOP. You were both on there together. She would go on to provide the singing voice of Jasmine in Disney's original Aladdin, and you provided the Jasmine voice in the sequels, Return of Jafar and The King of Thieves. Did you guys ever laugh about that in hindsight? Hey, we were in Miss Saigon, and then we both became Jasmine.
Yeah, actually, I did a concert last year with of Aronson Flaherty, who wrote Anastasia, and Leia and I did this concert together, and it was like, wow, isn't that amazing? The connection over the years. It was really, I know that was very cool. That was very cool. And I love the animated movie work I've done. I just did a tribute to Stephen Flaherty, the composer of Anastasia at Carnegie Hall, and I got to sing the Oscar-nominated song "Journey to the Past" from Anastasia, and that's one of my favorite, jobs I've ever had.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Anastasia. A lot of our listeners will remember it. It came out in 1997, and Disney was like, dominating and doing, the whole Disney renaissance of Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Lion King and all that stuff. But Don Bluth was always like making great stuff, sort of, as an alternate to Disney, Five-O, American Tail, and Land Before Time, and All Dogs Go to Heaven, Thumbelina, all that stuff. And Anastasia was one of the most beloved ones. So just, even more memories of that, because I believe the role was voiced by Meg Ryan and
Yes.
Kirsten Dunst and Lacey Chabert and all, you know what I mean? Like voicing it at Anastasia at different ages. But you got to do the singing. So did you ever interact with them? Or I assume you're all in different vocal booths, but I don't know, any red carpet
No, you know
premieres or
what? I
anything?
actually I actually met Meg Ryan for the first time at the premiere. There was a party at the Plaza Hotel in New York. But no, I never actually, we did everything separately. I did get to sing in the movie with Angela Lansbury, who played the grandmother. And I had done a Sondheim concert with her in 1983. And so it was the first time I had been with her since then. And she was the late, great Dame Angela Lansbury. It was incredible. When we did Anastasia, I don't think we had any idea. I don't think I realized the impact it would have on people, years later, thanks to the album and thanks to the video. And then, of course, there was a Broadway stage version of it. But that's something that's been amazing to me, is to how many people come up to me. And yeah, people in their 20s and especially in their 30s, and they look at me. I can tell someone comes up to me. I can see it in their eyes that they're Anastasia fans. I can just, as soon as I see them, I want Anastasia, and they're like, yes. What's funny though is now Disney bought Anastasia.
Disney
They
bought
bought the
everything in the
20th
last couple
Century
years.
Fox. They bought 20th Century Fox.
Right.
And so actually someone just pointed out to me yesterday on Instagram at Disney, I think at Disney World, there's now there's a beautiful, there's merch now, Anastasia merch at Disney World. So I need to go to Disney World.
You're officially folded into the Disney brand now. Well, yeah,
Right.
I remember the articles where the mouse, like they said, the mouse ate the fox when Disney bought
Right.
20.
And for years, people were like, thought Anastasia was a Disney princess, but she wasn't. But now she is.
Yeah, it was the Don Bluth rival to Walt Disney, and
Right.
now they're all under the same umbrella. So now I guess now you're on Disney Plus, probably. So there you go. It's all,
I guess I am.
you can listen to them songs forever and ever. But hey, real quick, you mentioned Angela Lansbury and as the grandma in Anastasia, but actually I think you also worked not really directly with her, but you shared, credits on Beauty and the Beast, because she was Mrs. Potts, and I believe you had the legendary role of the dancing napkin rings.
That's right. But also, if you listen to the opening number, am I allowed? Can I sing?
Oh, are you kidding me? I wish we were doing it the whole time.
Okay. All right. This is what I did in Anastasia in the opening number. I mean, in Beauty and the Beast, in the opening number. Good day. Thank you.
That's the line. Are you talking like in the whole the Belle's opening song?
Yes, all that. We all played many different characters. Right. We had little things. So that was my solo line. And I also was one of Gaston's silly girls. So if you listen really closely, you can kind of pick out my voice in that. And then I was a singing and dancing napkin ring. It really showed, I think Beauty and the Beast really showed my range as a singing actress.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can't Be Our Guest without the dancing napkin ring, and
that's right.
Gaston songs. And then of course the big opening number. And you were one of the people in the poor provincial town.
That's
So,
right. Well, you really did your research, Jason. I am so impressed.
well, thank you. But also, a lot of those Disney songs and Bluth songs are just burned into my brain. So it's
Oh
just
yeah.
kind of just rattling around as we talk. Uh, wait. So are you? Can you break some news? Who was the one that said I need 6 eggs? It's too expensive. That wasn't you.
No, that was who was that? I'd have to think. I'm not sure if that might have been Alex Corey. I'm not sure. It was I auditioned for Belle in Beauty and the Beast, and I got to like the final 5, and I didn't get it. And I said to my agent, can you ask them if they need anyone to sing in the chorus? And they were like, you want to sing in the chorus? I'm like, yes, it would be so much fun. And I love choral singing. And they actually assembled an amazing cast of Broadway performers, and we had so much fun. We had so much fun doing that movie. We did it like over a year, and so it was always fun to come back and do another song.
No, it's an all-timer, as is Anastasia. And of course, yeah, everyone just, go through the whole animated library, folks. You'll see Liz Callaway's voice in The Swan Princess and The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, and so many ones that we don't have time to go into. But before we do before we wrap it back around to Sondheim, one final thing that people might not remember, you and your sister, Anne Hampton Callaway, you sang the TV song, the theme song for The Nanny, Fran Drescher?
Yes. Anne wrote the song, and she sings lead on it, and I sing backup vocals on it. Watch out, CC. And see, I sang twice for you, Jason.
That's great.
But it's, I remember Anne said, hey, I'm doing this demo for Fran Drescher, having no idea that The Nanny would run for years and it's like, to me, it's one of the great TV theme songs. And when Anne and I do shows and concerts together, we often sing the theme song from The Nanny, and everyone knows it and they sing along. It's amazing.
And now the president of SAG-AFTRA, little did you know.
Yes, the amazing president of SAG-AFTRA, Fran Drescher.
Yes, thankfully the strikes are over and people are getting back to work. And your career continues on. Anything else you want to tease that you have coming up in addition to the show before we run? I always love to give people a chance to plug anything if they have anything else.
Well, if people want to know where I am, I started a Substack newsletter called Between Flights, and I share my schedule. And sometimes I do sing songs from my kitchen table and behind the scenes things. If anyone wants to sign up for that at my website, lizcallaway.com. And the thing I'm most looking forward to are the Grammy Awards coming up. I'm nominated. My Sondheim album, my live album of the show I'm doing on Saturday night, To Steve with Love, is nominated for Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album. Also, and I'm against Bruce Springsteen is in this category. And, I feel like we're always lumped together. I don't know why, but
To Bruce,
so that's like, all right.
Yeah.
No, but it's just an absolute thrill to have my first Grammy nomination, especially for a Sondheim album. I'm just so proud and stunned and excited.
Wow, that's so cool. Congrats on the first Grammy nomination. Good luck at, beating the boss, Bruce. But in the meantime, everyone in the DC area can come hear all those songs from that Grammy nominated recording. Into Steve with Love, Liz Callaway celebrates Sondheim. It's going to be at the Kennedy Center this Saturday, January 20th at 7:30 p.m. So everybody get your tickets now. Hey, thanks so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate it.
So nice talking to you, Jason, and can't wait to come to DC.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.